I'm the first speaker affirming the motion that if given the offer to live a second life at the age of 70, this House would accept the offer. We're defining as this House as a rational individual who did parley in high school. So let's look at the model here. We're imagining basically you're a 70-year-old person and some magical genie or some other religious, spiritual, magical something comes up to you and offers you a choice. Either you choose to live a second life. So basically what that means is you die at age 70, you're going to be reborn and then get to live a second life, but you will still be the same person and like same personality and stuff, and you'll still have all the memories from your previous life. Alternatively, if you choose not to accept the offer, you're going to live out the rest of your regular life, and then you'll just die, whenever fate decides that you should die. And
See, Amber?
Yeah.
Does this function as like a reset button, like you're starting over your 70 years, or like you start a new 70 years from like that point, or like you die and start your 70 years? Can you explain what you mean by like the time frame or how this is working?
So if you accept, it's like, I don't know, say it's a 70-year-old person right now, it's 2023. If they accept the offer, they die, and then like pretty soon, I don't know, maybe they die in their sleep that night or something, and then they're reborn the next morning. It's still 2023, but now they're like a baby again, and then they get to restart their life and then live out the rest of that life. Make sense? Okay, cool. I'm at 1 minute and I am, yeah, and I'm resuming my time now. So the weighing mechanism here is net benefits, but weighed highly to the individual. Our first contention is that being reborn gives you an opportunity to live a better life. Subpoint A is that people learn from their mistakes. Life is a learning process, and theoretically, and you achieve wisdom as you get older and as you have more experiences. A lot of people say that you don't achieve true wisdom until you're 65. Because I'm 16, I don't know if that's true, but supposedly it is. So supposedly this person at 70 has probably achieved true wisdom. They're really smart. They've had a lot of life experiences. Subpoint B is that this person will be able to apply this wisdom to their future life. So they, for example, are going to know what things are actually important to prioritize in life to make themselves happy. For example, they might know that parley is the best thing to exist in the world, and they should prioritize spending all of their time on parley their second time throughout high school. Or, whatever else they deem to be most important and they've found to make themselves most happy. So basically the impacts here is just that they're going to have more time to achieve happiness. Because they're getting to live a second life, they will be able to get more happiness through this entire next life, and they're going to be able to achieve greater happiness than they were the first time around, because now they're coming into it with the wisdom of already having lived one life. The second contention is that there's an opportunity to be young again. Subpoint A, ask any elderly person if they would want to be young again, and they'd probably say yes, just to be able to live in a young, more functioning body again. They might dream about frolicking in their childhood home, or walking and running to school, going out dancing, whatever it is. Subpoint B is that old people probably want to be able to have all of these experiences again. They want to get away from both the physical restraints, such as your body slowly breaking down, but also mental ones, such as dementia and not being able to remember your loved ones anymore. Subpoint C, death is scary. Death is something that people ideally are going to want to avoid. This is why people pay lots and lots of money to both prolong their life while they're alive, trying to make sure they're as healthy as possible to live out their longest life. And also a lot of rich people nowadays are freezing themselves in hope of being revived later. So basically, they're going to be able to avoid death for longer, and they won't have as much fear of it. Subpoint D is that people are often curious about the future. People want to see the progress that they've made and go into the future. Think about famous artists, for example. So just like one example, the person who created Rent actually died the day before Rent ever premiered on Broadway. That's pretty sad. They never got to see the impact of their life's work. And this is true for most people. They're never going to get to meet their great-great-grandchildren, the people who they impacted throughout their lives. And this will they will get to do if they are able to live for longer. So the impacts here is that the person is happier, both because they get to satisfy their curiosity about their future. They're going to be able to do the things that they miss, like living through living in a younger body and having a younger mind again, and they just get to live out a happy life again. And then our third contention is that by choosing to take this offer, a super smart old young person can save the world. So subpoint A, most old people tend to achieve less things because of things not relating to their age, but not to necessarily their smarts, right? Maybe they have Alzheimer's or broke their hips, so physically they aren't able to create as much an impact. But furthermore, society often looks down on older people. And like in companies, usually once you reach a certain age, your company is going to start trying to push you out, trying to get you to retire. So this means that a person who is super duper smart and happens to be older can't necessarily create as much change with all the smarts, all the wisdom that they've garnered throughout life. Subpoint B, someone who's as smart as a 70-year-old, but able, and has that, but is physically much younger, will be able to do much more good in the world. Again, they have all of this wisdom, they have all of these smarts. So in their future life, they're not going to have to spend time relearning all of those things. They can spend their time elsewhere instead and focus on probably having a much bigger impact in the world than any of us on our first lives, at least as far as I know, are able to do. So the impact here is that society will be bettered by the massive wealth of knowledge held by this individual. Maybe they'll be able to cure cancer. Maybe they're going to be able to innovate on climate change in a very specific way. But certainly their increased smarts and increased wisdom will let them have a much larger impact on the world in their second life than any other person would be able to have in their first life. So the impacts here is that society is going to be improved and the happiness of everyone else in the world will improve. So overall here, I strongly urge a government vote. Thank you.
Cool. I'm Will, he, him. I'm the first speaker for the opposition. I'm not going to do an off-time roadmap. I'm just going to start with op and then move back to gov case. Okay. Time will start on my first word. Okay, so on the opposition, we'd like to start off by saying that we agree with the government framework of self-interest. And again, that's assuming you carry over your memories, your personality. That's all cool by us. Second, I want to make an observation about the round and add burden of proof on what the government needs to win. On the opposition, we'd say that there's no point of taking the offer unless the government can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that your next life will actually be better than the remaining 15 or 20 years that you would be living otherwise. And if the opposition is able to prove to you that that next life might not actually be able to be so good, then you should 100% of the time vote for the opposition. Okay, third and finally, in regards to scope, we'd say that you're, a senior person living in the United States. Just because we understand the United States better, it's an easier debate for us to have. Okay, two contentions we have for you. First, on the idea of why your second life won't be that bad, and second, on the idea of why it harms your current life. Okay, firstly, in regards to the second life, I think I have like 8 subpoints here. Firstly, in regards to mental health and relatability. When you are a baby who has the mind of a 70-year-old, you won't be able to relate to anyone around you. You'll be of a different generation, and you won't be able to make friends with anyone your age. And no one who's actually 70 years old will want to be friends with you because they're going to say, well, you're a baby. I don't want to be friends with the baby. I want to be friends with people. Sorry, not right now. I have a lot of case to get through. I'll see if I have time for it later on. And more largely on that, if you are essentially a baby boomer living in this younger generation, we'd say that, morality and the way life changes so much between generations, that the reason why baby boomers just can't understand our lives today is because there is so much of a difference. So you're going to be in that situation. You're going to be a Gen Z person, but with the mind of a baby boomer living in a world that's completely foreign to you. Second subpoint under this, odds are if you're born as the same person, but in just a random place, you're going to be born in a very different country with a drastically different culture. If you're just born as a random person with the same memories, there's no reason, there's no modeling given by Gov that you'll be born, with your family and friends around you. Although I'll get into later why it's actually worse to be born with your family and friends around you. So you'll likely be born in a different country that'll have, that drastically different culture, and the younger people have different culture. So there's a lot of culture shift that will essentially just drive you insane, because you'll be trying to relive a life that just simply isn't possible. Second subpoint on our C1, that everyone will think you're lying and that there's a chance of going insane. If you tell everyone around you, I'm 70 years old, but I'm a baby, they're going to think this kid's insane. No one's going to want to talk to you. The parents who you're born to are going to think you're insane. And, you will yourself be driven insane because you don't know what's real anymore. And the entirety of society denies your existence. And then the other option is that you don't tell people I'm a 70-year-old and you just try to live a normal life. In that case, you're going to live your entire life living out a massive lie. You're going to have this huge secret that if you ever tell anyone, they're going to think you're insane and you're going to push them away. So any relationships you actually have are going to be fake relationships because these people don't actually know about this massive secret inside of you. Third subpoint on physical health. If people realize that you're a baby with this genius intelligence, or even just with the average intelligence of an adult, you will likely be put in a lab or you'll be tested. Why is there this genius baby who can speak fluent English and can do complicated math projects? We want to study this person. If people really are as curious as the government suggests, then the US government or any government around the world will say, hey, this person managed to cheat death, or this person is a baby, but somehow they're a genius. We want to literally do tests on them. And even if you don't buy that you'll just be put in a lab and have tests done to you, you'll be treated different by everyone around you. No one your age will ever be able to connect with you because they'll think you're insane, or you're just simply, a 70-year-old trying to be friends with a 10-year-old. And you'll never actually be able to form those genuine connections that you really want to be able to have, a happy life. Third and final subpoint underneath this, then there's no reason why the world in your second life would actually be better. We'd say that at large, the world is actually getting worse. Climate change, China's getting stronger, human rights are being repealed all across the world, all that stuff. The world is getting worse. You'd rather just live out your short life now in a happy world than try to roll the dice with a very bad world in the future. Third subpoint on this is regret. We'd say that if you take the offer and you don't have a good life, all of your new life will be spent regretting a decision that you cannot go back upon. Perhaps the worst punishments in Greek mythology is Prometheus, who is forced to live out with his liver being eaten out every day. And the real punishment there isn't that his liver is being eaten out, it's that he's forced to live through torture every single day, and he cannot just have the sweet release of death. Fifth subpoint underneath our first contention on the idea of harms to past relationships. Let's say you're a baby. When you grow older, you're able to find the people who are in your past life. No matter how the clock resets, you'll still be younger than anyone you used to know. All of your friends who are now 85 would say, hey, you're a 15-year-old. I don't actually believe you. You're insane. Or you just won't be able to relate to them since you'll literally be a child. You'll be the age of your grandchildren, which will result in a massive psychological distress to your family, because then you'll be a literal grandfather, but younger, or smaller, or weaker than everyone else in your life. Additionally, this just personally would really hurt you because you can't interact with your loved ones, but you'll know they're somewhere out there in the world. Because again, you'll likely be born in a different country. There's no reason why you'll just be born to the same family you had before. It's a random birth. You're just gonna be born again somewhere. Second to last subpoint on this, you'll be stagnant in your beliefs. This idea that you'll be a baby boomer with a very traditionalistic lifestyle or traditionalistic beliefs like most baby boomers are. And so you'll be less likely to accept future changes in societal shifts. Final subpoint on our contention one, when you're a baby, even if you're really smart, you'll literally have the body of a baby. You're not going to know how to walk. You're not going to be able to use doors or anything. So there's a certain age period where you're going to be trying to do so many things, but you're literally a baby and you just can't do them. So there's at least a 10 or 15 year waiting period until you're a teenager or an adult where you can actually do anything real with your life. So that's essentially just you being kept in the prison of a baby's body for 10 or 15 years until you can do anything with this new life. So contention 2 about harms to your current life. I'll be quick on this. Subpoint 1, you'll have to leave all your family and friends behind. They will live without you in their lives, and you'll live with this regret. If they know about your decision, will hate you. They'll say, I used to have this person in my life and then they just left me. So you're essentially abandoning your family for the chance of having a better life. So they're going to hate you because of that. And at some point, you're also going to hate yourself, because as the government has stressed in their case, people really want to relive the good old days of their childhood, but you can't do that if you're, some random baby in China, or you're not able to actually reconnect with your family. And even if you are able to reconnect with your family is going to be 85 and you're going to be 10. So there's really not a lot you're getting out of that. Second final subpoint on our C2 is the idea that you'll live with guilt, knowing the harms to your relationships. Without a doubt, your family will be harmed by this because they were perfectly fine. They wanted you to just live out the rest of your life with them, but you abandoned them for your own self-interest, and you'll always feel bad for that. Okay, moving on now to the government case on the last minute and a half of my speech. On their C1, they say that it gives you the opportunity to live a better life. You learn from your mistakes. We'd say that older people they haven't necessarily figured out all the problems in the world. They don't exactly know everything about how they would have relived their lives. And being reborn doesn't mean you just are suddenly, I know exactly what I want to do with my life. Most people, in fact, a lot of people live out their lives and say like, hey, I think I made a lot of the right decisions. And even if you have some regrets, you wouldn't give away everything you just had to try to relive all of that. Second of all, you get really bored doing the same things over and over. So, you'd be a 5-year-old in preschool and you'd have to sing your ABCs or learn how to tie your shoes. And, you've already been doing that for 80 years, but no one else can. So you're just like the life that you would be forced to live as a baby, as a toddler, as a child would just be, not in any way the life that, Gov thinks you're going to be living. Moving on now to the government contention too, and the idea of the opportunity to be young again. The reason why, adults and elderly people dream of, going back in time because they want things to be as it was. But again, this motion isn't, I'm going to go back in time 70 years. It's, I'm going to cease being who I am now, and I'm suddenly going to be a baby. So by the time I'm, so everyone knows here, the average life expectancy is like 77 or something in the US. So by the time you're 70 years old, anyone your age in your past life will probably be dead. So but at the point where you could actually have a life, where you could be driving, where you could have a job, where anything would happen, anyone your age you knew in your past life will be dead. You will not be able to relive the life you once have. You'll be forced to live with entirely new people in an entirely new location, not knowing the language, not being a part of the culture. And it's simply just not something that you'll be able to exist in. For all those reasons, I couldn't be prouder to oppose. And there's a few things I didn't get to, which Eesha will get to in her second op. Thank you so much.
Okay. Start my timer here. Cool. So just quick intro. Hello, my name is Eliot. I will be the second speaker for the government in this debate, and I'll start my time now. So firstly, on top of case, we agree with pretty much all of the framing given by the op. We will say that this idea that the burden of the government is to prove that your kind of next life will be better than these 15 years isn't really true, because we also say that there's a lot of stuff like just the curiosity of what's going to happen in the future that could make you take the bet or not, right? We say it's probably better for you to take the bet if you're incredibly curious about what's going to happen in the future, what innovations are going to show up, et cetera, even if necessarily you understand the chance that, it could go worse, right? We're kind of talking about taking a bet here and the probability of that bet working out, as opposed to an implicit proof that this is better or worse. Now on to opposition case. So firstly, they talk about mental health and relatability, and they talk about how you won't be able to make friends if you're young. You basically won't be relatable to anyone. And, we have few responses to this. First of all, we say the reason that old people aren't able to make friends is because they're old, and because old people are kind of looked down on by the rest of society. We say that someone who's pretty smart and capable, but doesn't have the physical and mental barriers of being an older person, will actually be able to relate to people more because they're interesting, right? They have stories to tell, they have anecdotes to think about in the actual life. And so you will be able to relate to people more, especially if you're kind of able to spread your wisdom to other people. They also talk about how the way kind of life changes is big between Gen Z and our current generation. And we say that, again, you can relearn that really easily. Baby boomers are kind of only like baby boomers because all they're doing is interacting with other, POI, I'll take it later. The only reason that baby boomers are like other baby boomers is because they're constantly interacting with other baby boomers. So then there's some point B, they talk about how you're reborn in a different random place and that this is a culture shift. We have two responses to this. First of all, people love travel and love different cultures. So this is actually going to be more interesting. And secondly, yeah, you can turn this because you're probably someone who's really smart and has a lot of life experience. So you're actually able to adapt to this new culture quickly. You're able to kind of rise up within that culture and become someone who's interesting, not only because they were born in this specific place, because they know a lot about, let's say, the US and also the place that they were born. We're saying a lot of this stuff doesn't apply simply because we say that someone who's very intelligent and very knowledgeable is going to be able to work their way up through society no matter what. Thirdly, they talk about how lying and basically say either people won't believe you or you'll have to deny, and that's hard to live through. First of all, we say that because you're smart enough to understand that you should probably just like pretend to be a baby for the first 10 years of your life. I'll get into this more later, but we say that the first 10 years of your life is not that significant for someone who's 80 compared to how significant it is for someone who's like 10. Your perception of time changes as you get older. And so we say for someone who's older, they're basically going to be able to kind of move through that period quicker in their life and then live on in the part of their life where they're able to be an adult. They're able to kind of interact with society normally, as opposed to being a kid and having to pretend to like, oh, I don't know my ABCs, stuff like that. And then secondly, we say that people can have secrets and live a happy life. Until now, I've told no one that I'm actually US Senator Mitt Romney, but yet no one believes me. But I can live with that lie because it's something that I could just kind of have to put aside in order to go through life and in order to enjoy experiences. We say someone with the maturity of a 70 or 80-year-old and someone who's able to understand that what they're doing is for and not good, they're able to kind of put that aside and go, okay, I'm just going to enjoy my new life, right? It's a chance to start over. This is true for people in like the witness protection program too. Like when the alternative is you're dying, people are happy to start a new life. Then they talk about physical health. They say that like you'll be lab tested, and there's this genius baby. Again, this is solved by lying because again, if you're smart enough to understand that you kind of have to lie to live a normal life, you probably will lie. We also said there's not going to, the baby is not going to be like lab tested because it's just a normal baby. It's just like smart in theory. So there's not, you're not going to have like be put under a microscope. So yeah, and then they say like you'll be treated differently by people, but again, you can do this by basically kind of like lying, and you're just basically exist as a knowledgeable person, right? You're a gifted child or whatever, or you can kind of make that decision yourself, and that's what's really great about this scenario. And then they say finally that you'll spend this new life kind of regretting things, right? This is non-unique, and it's actually worse in the kind of alternative, right? If you get dementia or stop being able to do things and basically just get put in a nursing home, all you will know is that you could have had a better life, right? You'll spend years of your life sitting in a nursing home with no one there going, I could have taken this offer, I could have done this. Whereas in the alternative, you aren't like forced to live through the future, right? You can kind of make this decision and then make up your own mind as you go along the way. Then they talk about friends and loved ones. They say that like, it's hard to be with friends with someone if you don't die. They say like you would want to interact with your loved ones. We say A, it's hard to be friends with someone if you're dead. The alternative is dying. B, we say that you live in the age of social media, Facebook and stuff. I can still go see what my son is up to on Facebook because that's what's great about the internet. We say that's still better than dying. Most people want to keep in touch with their loved ones because that's what makes them happy. Even if they can't directly communicate with them, the alternative is dying. I don't think I'll have time. I might get to it later. Then they talk about stagnant beliefs. Again, people's beliefs would change if they're around kids all the time, if they're interacting with younger people. Again, like our debate coaches are around us a lot and kind of have learned our beliefs and interact with them. I think my coach is like really cool, actually. So, people who are, my debate coach isn't old, but anyway, other people can learn new things. No, thank you. And then just like not having to do anything and not having any obligations, I think is pretty fun. Most people enjoy childhood. Most people enjoy the ability of like, going through that time and not having to work, not having to do other stuff like that. And then again, we also say that, not being able to walk, that'll change in 2 years. 2 years isn't that long for someone who's lived 80 years and is now kind of going on. I'll take the POI quickly.
Are you calling Joel Jacob old?
No, I actually said it was young. I think Joel Jacobs is wonderful and very cool. Great. Now on the second contention is just like your family will hate you. The alternative here, well, A, this is presuming that like your family knows. Again, we're saying this genie kind of comes to you and you make the decision and you like die in your sleep or whatever, that's fine. Secondly, we say that like the alternative is you die. I think your family would be much happier. If my grandma came up to me and was like, hey, I get to be young again and we can also kind of like stay in contact, I'd be like, that's awesome. And you'll be young. Let's go on a bike ride. That'd be great because I enjoy spending time with my family. And the alternative is, them dying, which no one likes. So you actually turn this. Now on Gov, Our first contention, we talk about how there's an opportunity to live a better life. They say old people haven't figured out all the wisdom in the world. This is not a brink impact. Old people are generally more wise than young people. This is just inherently true because you learn from life experience. You're bringing this experience into the future. Therefore, you are going to be a smarter person. You're going to kind of learn from your mistakes. Again, see everything that Amber says here. Then they say, like, again, you get kind of bored doing things over and over. Again, 10 years is not that long for someone who's lived for 80 years, and the alternative is dying. Even if all your friends were dead, you'd be dead also. So I think it's still better for someone to kind of live a life where they can make new friends. You know, what's the thing? Circles around, make new friends and keep the old, et cetera, et cetera. Like, you can do that, right? And then you can also do other stuff. Just pretend to be a 5-year-old music prodigy or learn piano, or pretend to be a 5-year-old language prodigy and go like travel the world for free. You have a lot of opportunity to do things that are really cool and kind of get to that later. And then we say that basically contentions 2 and 3 were like not responded to at all, which kind of sucks. But anyway, we say that, I'm just going to go over them again. You have the opportunity to be young. You have the opportunity to kind of live your life. We say death is scary. People don't want to die. And so you're kind of motivated to push that back. We say that people are curious about the future, which is a huge impact that is unresponded to. We're saying, I want to see what my impact on the world would be. I want to see in 50, 100 years, will climate change happen? Like, what happens, you know? Will technology exist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? I want to learn more things about the future. And then third, we just say super smart old young people can save the world. This is also unresponded to. Super smart old young people can like probably cure cancer, or can just make a huge impact on the world, you know, unify cultures, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the probability of this happening is much greater in our world than if you just died originally. Take the chance, save the world. For these reasons, vote Gov. Thank you.
Eesha, would you mind if I quickly run to the bathroom before you start your
Oh
speech?
yeah, take your time, Amber. I'll kill time so we're not just sitting in silence and that you have to fast forward through this part of the video. How are your guys' days going? Is everyone having fun? Woo! That
This
was
is not a panel. This is not a panel discussion.
I'm having fun. Thanks for asking.
Wait,
I'm one of the judges.
I assumed. Nobody else is like participating. I think people should unmute and tell me about their days so far.
Yeah,
It'd
we
be
have
really fun.
5 people in the Zoom call, guys. Come on.
Anyone, guys? Anyone want to share fun facts? Oh, Amber's back. Never mind then.
Never
See-
mind. Panel. This concludes the panel.
Good panel.
Okay. I'm going to give an off-time roadmap and then get started with my speech. I'm going to give an overview, float wherever you'd like. You can just listen to it. I'm going to talk about the round broadly, and then I'm going to go through the gov case, then op. So overview, gov, op. If I'm talking too fast, please let me know and I'll slow down. Nonverbal POIs would be preferable, Amber and Eliot. Like, you can use the Zoom hand too. Okay. Is anyone not ready? My time starts now. I want to first just walk you through this time frame. This like magical genie shows up. You're 70 years old and the genie goes, do you want to be born again? And you're like, sure. So that night, kind of like Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind sort of way, they kind of kill you in your sleep and bring you back to life, and then poof, you're a baby. Now you have to live in this body where you can't control when you urinate. You can't control when you cry. You can't control when you're hungry. You are stripped of your autonomy because, of course, you're a baby. You cannot communicate. I think this is pretty tangential to being in a nursing home, having dementia, not having control of your bladder. So you're just going into that all over again. And here's the beauty of it. You know this and nobody else does. And you have to live all of your life, as Eliot says, living this lie for your own protection. So Judge, would you want to spend the next 10 years of your life trying to learn how to tie your shoes and do your ABCs and watch all of your friends just eat their apple slices with peanut butter? Or would you rather spend the remaining time you have left with your family? Because as Amber says, this happens that night in your sleep, meaning you have what, a couple hours, 24 max to say goodbye to all of your family instead of living out your life as you'd want to, making that impact with that person. So now let's go through gov case. So we pretty much get conceded on all the framework, though Eliot makes one clarification that curiosity means you take the bet. It doesn't need to be a better life or a promise of a better life. But we'd argue that when you're taking a bet, you want the better odds, right? So you choose this thinking I'm going to have a better life. You wouldn't curiosity think, hey, life's going to suck, I'm going to take this. You take this wanting it to be good. Okay, so now on gov case. So the first thing they talk about how is you're going to have a better life, but this entire Gov case operates under two assumptions. The first is that you are happy and want to continue this happiness, and the second that you're under like this smart, really good individual. What if I hate the world and I'm like really racist and really bigoted? Do we want to give me another 70 years on the planet to spread my rhetoric? Like, if I have spent 70 years thinking these ways, I'm going to pop out of whatever womb I pop out of and spread that rhetoric for 70 more. I've had 70 years to dig in my feet to become stubborn. I don't know. My grandfather's old and he's really, really stubborn. I'm sure that's probably true for a lot of old people. I'm making like broad assumptions. But still, you have more time to get stuck in your ways. Then they talk about how life is about learning and older is wiser. But the other idiom here is that an old dog can't learn new tricks. It's going to be really hard to adjust, as Foley says, to this entire new world. You aren't reborn in your same century. You have to start all over when the kids are typing on their newfangled iPads and doing those TikTok dances and all of that. You don't understand that. It's going to be harder to connect. This alienation just increases. Then they talk about how when you're 70, you have a lot of wisdom. Yes. And you should use that wisdom to spend with your family in your generation instead of going from a place where you were once dominant and understanding everything to knowing nothing all over again. That rebirth is going to be really traumatic. Okay. Then they give you this whole parley thing that kind of gets dropped, but I'm going to just basically say that, like, why don't we live out our current parley lives instead of trying to have more parley in it later? Like, also, the other thing is a lot of parley debaters, speaking from experience, we're really stubborn and really argumentative and really stuck in our ways. So I can bet that our parley debaters who go out and we think we are really smart, we're really great, we will go out and do whatever we want to do because we're phenomenal, awesome people. But I'm sure there are bad parley debaters who think bad thoughts out there. Like, you can't just make some generalization that we're all going to be perfect and really high achievers. Okay. Second contention, more time to be young, more time in a young body, more time to be a baby pooping in diapers, like speaking in baby language, learning your ABCs. All of being young is not that positive. More time stressing over college apps, more time going through anxiety and whatever other mental health conditions you have, more time fighting with your parents, more time to be in an accident or be in mortal danger. More time does mean more bad as much as it means more good. And you'd have to go knowing this. Eliot, I have a lot to get through. I'm so sorry. They basically idealize this. They'll say you'll frolic in your childhood home, you'll walk, you'll run, you'll dance, but you could also be born without a leg. You could be born you could be born with some sort of disability, and you would have to live through that knowing that you gave up an old life where you were 100% healthy for this. So you'd also have to live with this regret. They also tell you could get into this like physical and mental restraints with dementia. But here's the thing: if you get offered this thing, like this choice when you have dementia, are you gonna be able to pick this choice anyways? Or are you gonna do we carry the dementia over? There's a lot of unanswered questions. So the idea that this is an escape from your dementia feels like a really big reach. And they give you this idea of you want to cheat death with rich people freezing themselves. Here's the problem. Amber impacts this out to less fear. I'd argue, Judge, that avoidance is fear, right? Because if you fear death so much to put it off for 70 more years, you're going to live those 70 more years with that increased fear of death that you worked harder to put off in the first place. So it's like when you put off getting a blood test or putting off getting a shot, that's more time in that waiting room in your mind to worry about it. So it's just going to get worse and worse. And then they talk about you can see the impact of your life's work. You can meet your great grandkids. To be quite honest, if a 10-year-old child walked up to me and was like, I'm your grandmother, I would freak out and call the cops. Eliot talks on wanting to go on a bike ride with his grandmother. Doesn't it make more sense for his grandmother to use her remaining days she has left on this planet to do that bike ride now, instead of being a 10-year-old walking up to Eliot and being like, hi, Eliot, I'm your grandmother? I think Eliot would derive more joy from the grandmother he has now, rather than this other person who's honestly going to be somewhat of a stranger, right? Having an entire new life and lived experience. So you'd have more genuine connection with the people you have now. Sorry, Eliot, I don't know your grandmother well. Everything I know about her, she's lovely. Anyways, so they talk about you can satisfy your curiosity about the future. At a certain point, we have to let it go, right? You're just going to make this fear of yourself later. What's going to happen those next 70 years expire? You're going to want to learn more. And what if the future isn't good? What if the world all explodes, or we get hit by an asteroid, or we all die? It's a 50-50, it's less than a 50-50 bet. I think there's more chance of bad than good, thinking about how climate change is going, that the world's all going to melt down and we're going to have a horrible time. So knowing that you want to see your grandkids again, do you want to Facebook stalk them, or do you want to live out the days you have left? Third contention, you can save the world. First of all, this is a lot of pressure to put on yourself. Do you know all those characters in books and movies where they're the chosen one, kind of Harry Potter style? That seems like a lot of stress and a lot of responsibility to have the world's weight on your shoulders to try to fix all their problems. They say that old people can do less because they're old, but here's the thing. You are a 10-year-old at best when people start listening to you. You have to live 10 years of your life seeing and knowing solutions to climate change, knowing how to cure cancer and framing past research, and nobody's going to listen to you because you're 10. And they talk about how ageism matters. Ageism matters when you're young too, so it flips to both sides. They talk about how like companies push you out and you can't do what you want when you're old, but I'd argue you can't do what you want when you're young. And then by the time you get to an age when you can make a difference, the world's gonna be so drastically different that your past experience is no longer applicable. Then they talk about you're not gonna spend time relearning things, but the problem is if all of those you're surrounded by are also relearning things, then you're gonna have to spend that time as well. Additionally, by Foley's like thing about you could be born in somewhere else, right? Like if I'm born in, I don't know, Africa, I'm gonna have to spend my time relearning those customs and those languages. And it's going to be harder for me because I'm going to be so set in my way with my current customs and current languages. Then Amber, I'm so sorry. They have these impacts of like curing cancer, climate change, you can save the world, everyone gets happier. Can one singular person do that? Can one singular person really stop climate change? No, it's a global effort. And going there with this weight on your shoulders is just going to increase this like mental issues that we're talking about. On our side of the case, on op case, Eliot collapses on a few things. First of all, he says you're smart. We can't guarantee that. There's no guarantee that you're going to be a really smart person when you pop out of this womb. Secondarily, he gives you this line of analysis that basically just says lie. Lie for your protection, lie for your safety, lie you're going to be happy. How many of us are genuinely happy living a lie? How many of us walk around hiding part of our identity and feeling safe and happy? Think about all the kids who can't come out to their parents and live with that shame and that guilt because of that secrecy. That's what that government side is advocating for, is hiding such an integral part of yourself every single day, not having people believe in you. I think that leads to pretty bad mental health impacts when you're just hiding. Then Eliot gives you this whole line of analysis of old people can't make friends because they're old, but they're still really cool. Joel Jacobs is not old. I think he's pretty young. Love you, Joel. But anyways, I think you could still enjoy these relationships you currently have in your current life instead of trying to start all over. Different culture, people say Eliot says that you can learn more, you love traveling. It's really hard to relearn all of this and have this whole alienation aspect of like growing up in a new place, knowing that. Like you hear the stories of people who get reincarnated and like have memories of their past life. That seems really freaky and leads to a lot of alienation. Okay, then they basically say you don't want to die, you'll be happier not alive. That's the alternative they present. But here's the thing. The way this all crumbles is do not resuscitate arguments. When people sign the thing in the hospital and say, I have lived a good life, I don't want to go through this, I want to die. That's, I think, the better comparative than you're going to die. People make this choice because they've lived fruitful lives and want to enjoy that instead of continuously pushing for what could be worse. And because that's a very common thing, and because I covered all of their case, and the only thing they really read on contention too is you'll have regret from not doing it. I think you can have more regret from doing it because you have 70 years to live out this regret versus like 20, maybe tops, you live to 90. So on our side of the house, you're not living a lie and you enjoy the time with the people you have left and that you love. So for all those reasons and many more, I urge a vote for the opposition today. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. Third speech for the opposition, 4 minutes with a 30-second grace. I'm just going to be running through some stuff and then hitting 2 collapses. All right. Okay. Time will start on my first word. I want to start off with a quick observation on some burden of proof that I put on the government and then they respond to about how you should think of it as a bet. I just want to clarify that if you take this offer, the downside is potentially massive. You could live a horrendous life, be depressed, have all of the issues that we talk about. And then there's some potential upside. Maybe if you combat all of the 8, subpoints that we give you, you could have that potential benefit. But we agree that there is some statistics for this, there is probability. And the most important weighing mechanism that you can really take on in this debate is that there's a substantially higher chance that you will be unhappy in the second life than happy in it. And for that reason, we couldn't be prouder to oppose. 2 things I want to get off the table and then 2 collapses. The first is this idea that we get from the government that you can just relearn everything. But I'd pose a question to that, which is, do you actually want to? The entire government case boils down to like old people really want to be young again. But you don't get to have the same life. You get to be a completely different person. You get to have a completely different body in a completely different country and a completely different lifestyle in a world that's probably going to end in a few years. Is that really what old people dream about? No, it's not. They dream about going back in time to the lives they once had, not resetting everything and starting anew. Second response, the government says that someone who's smart will probably just like work their way up and be rich. One statistic for you, almost 50% of the world's population lives in either India or China, where a majority of people live in either poverty or starvation. Is that a good life? So again, in taking this offer, you have at least a 25% chance of living in poverty or starvation. Again, purely just going back to probability. The odds that you live a happy life are not high. You have at least a 25% chance of living in poverty or starvation. Okay, 2 collapses. The first is on the idea of living a lie. The government tells you that, oh, you can just put it to the side. You don't have to tell other people. But again, I remind you that if you do that, your entire existence is a lie. You can never open up to anyone. That's the reason why for a lot of people, sharing personal things with their friends, coming out of the closet, telling your family, some really personal thing, that's such a great experience for them. Because when you don't do that, the lies of your life will eat away at you. This is a genuine psychological concept. And just from a larger perspective, it's horrible to keep in a lie to those you love. So either you have 2 options. You just never get close to anyone in your life and you keep them at arm's length and you don't tell them about these experiences, or you tell them about them and they think you're insane. Second response on the idea of, oh, you can just put it aside. The government tells us that, you'll still be able to have some connection with your family members, that you can just look at your son on Facebook. First of all, odds are you won't have a phone as a baby. And second of all, the world that the government is proposing, just to clarify, is that you'd rather be an adult in a baby's body, stalking your middle-aged child on Facebook, than actually just living out your life where you can talk with that person when you can actually go on bike rides with them, have a real, genuine relationship with them. That's just frankly a ridiculous argument to put up, and I don't really need to spend any more time on it. Second collapse that I want to put forward in this debate is just essentially imagine the horrendous life you'd be living. You're trapped in a baby's body, and even more than that, you're trapped in a body that isn't your own. You might be a different gender. Imagine the gender dysphoria you'd have if you're a man in a woman's body and you live in rural India and you can't come out and you can't get medical care or else you'd be killed. You don't even have access to it. What if you're a different race that you used to be discriminated by and now you're against, and now you're a part of that race now? Those are just 2 examples, but there are a million I could give you. That's the reason why body dysphoria is such a terrible thing, which drives people insane, drives them depressed, it drives them suicidal, because it's a horrible thing to have to go through. And for normal people, they can come to a stage in their lives where they can learn to accept who they are, they can learn to accept their bodies, but you can't, because it's literally not your body. You know what your body actually is, but you cannot ever possibly be inside of it. Because of that, you are doomed to a life of horrendous body dysphoria. Even if you buy the government's case that you might be happy when you're 30, living such a dramatically different life when you're an old person, when you're a stubborn baby boomer, when you're too old to learn new tricks, this will drive you insane for the first few years of your life. So the probability of you being able to make it through that traumatic period and then suddenly miraculously being able to be happy in a world stricken by climate change and nuclear war and the backsliding of human rights, all things that we're pretty confident are going to happen in the future. Are you really saying that's a better world to live in? On the opposition, we can firmly say no. For all those reasons, I couldn't be prouder to oppose. Thank you.
All right, perfect. All right, in this last speech, I'm going to be going over 2 voting issues, one of greater happiness, secondarily of saving the world. I'm going to be talking about what we said, what they said, and also responding to a bunch of new things that were brought up in the last 2 speeches. So under the first voting issue of greater happiness, we tell you basically a couple things. The biggest one we tell you is that having wisdom and also having this newer, younger body is going to lead to more happiness, because you can use all your wisdom in this new life, in this new body, to bring yourself happiness, because you already know what makes you happy, what you like, and what you want to prioritize in life. They tell you a bunch of things. One, they tell you that you're going to be really, really bored. Unfortunately, here they actually contradict themselves, because they also spend a lot of time talking about how people are going to be in culture shock, how people aren't going to be able to learn new cultures, new ways. Now, my partner outright rebuts this, that you can learn new cultures in new ways, but I also want to point out that if I grew up in the US and suddenly I'm growing up in Africa, I'm actually going to be pretty not bored, because suddenly I'm getting to learn all these new cultures. And that's why, as my partner said, people love to travel. So, and then the second thing that we tell you here is that the comparative is worse. So Eesha brings up this idea of like how basically being a baby is the same, where you like can't communicate, is the same as having like dementia and being in a nursing home. Even if you believe this is true, here's the difference. If you have dementia and are in a nursing home, the ending is that you die, you're done, life is over. If you're a baby, yes, you have to go through that same experience, but at the end, you become a grown-up, you become a teenager, and suddenly you have a whole new life. Now, if on both sides of the house, you are having to go through this experience of not being able to communicate and being like unable to function, would you rather have death be at the end or a whole new life? Personally, I'd choose more experience and a new life. The second thing they tell you is talk about a lot is lying. We tell you basically just that like people can be happy. People often do lie about things. Very like I don't think anyone is completely truthful about every experience, everything in life. That's why a lot of people have things like diaries where they can talk to just themselves about things that they don't want to talk about. And we also tell you that this is probably outweighed by all of the other things that you are getting to experience, all the new memories that you are getting to have. The third thing they talk about is connection with family members. We tell you that and my partner points out that like in one side of the house, you're dying, so you're going to lose that connection anyways, versus on Gov, you're going to get to live a whole nother life, not only meeting your current family members, but also meeting your great-great-grandchildren, your great-great-great-grandchildren, and getting to still stay in contact with your family for much longer. And then the fourth thing we tell you here is basically that the future might get worse. This was completely new, so I have a couple responses. One, we tell you that like the world has gotten better, life rates are going up, like there is less violence now than there was significantly like multiple centuries ago. And then the second thing they tell you is about like maybe you'll be born in a different body, maybe you'll be born in a body without a leg, all of these different things. But my top of case, which they accepted, explicitly stated that you're going to be born in the same body and the same personality. It'll just be young again. So I don't see how any of this should matter. Now, the second voting, so basically overall on greater happiness, we tell you that because you're just going to get to have all of these new and continued experiences, you are going to have more happiness in your future lifetime than you will in the very short amount of life that you have left before you get dementia, before you get put into a nursing home and then eventually die, just because you have more ability and more life to do so. Then the second voting issue here is about saving the world. Their main response here, which was new out of the MO, was that like maybe this person will be a bigot or something and actually create a really bad impact on the world. Here's the thing, we're thinking about this from the individual's perspective. No individual thinks that they have really bad takes, so they are always going to think that they are having a good impact on the world, whether or not that's actually true, right? Like, I don't think Trump thinks that he is hurting the world. I'm pretty sure he thinks he's actually doing great things. So on this, we're going to see that you're able to have a bigger impact because of your greater wisdom, and you're going to think you're saving the world regardless of what you're actually doing. So for all of these reasons, I urge a strong vote for having a second life. Thank you.